Hi everyone, my name is Mare. I am a writer. I love digging into writing craft resources and figuring out what works for storytelling. And I want to tell you one of the things that I've found is key to good storytelling that no one resource told me. I've had to piece this together from all of the different resources that I've consumed, and that is the purpose and importance of a midpoint. In this video, I'm going to take you through the four purposes of the midpoint. And now that I know this, they just keep popping out at me. Like every single book, I'm like, did I like it? And was it because the midpoint was good? Yeah, probably. So, first of all, let's talk about what a midpoint is. So, a midpoint is the event that happens near 50% of the story where things change. Basically, is a turning point or a twist in the story. The very first thing that I really heard about a midpoint and the concept of a midpoint was here's how to avoid the muddy middle syndrome or the sagging middle syndrome is you give your book a midpoint. And that's almost like a tent pole. Like in the middle of the story, it holds it up rather than letting it sag. And mostly what that's talking about is tension, momentum, pacing. Instead of just having a huge progression of thing after thing after thing, we have a turning point. And basically, it cuts a book in half. And so the fun and games part, which comes before the midpoint, they are figuring out this new world. They're trying to cope with all the changes. They're in the adventure, right? The midpoint cuts it in half, where the reader gets the sense that from here on out, everything's going to be different. And so it holds up the middle of the book. But what it really means if something's holding up the middle of something is it's actually holding up the entire structure. So I think midpoints are insanely important and that a lot of writing craft books don't touch on this very much. But in really, really simple terms, I want to tell you what the midpoint does and how it propels the character towards the finale. So in a book, a midpoint is going to do four things. Number one, things get more dangerous. That's one of the biggest key factors here, especially in anything action focused, which are going to be most fantasy sci-fi books, which is what I read, right? So in a contemporary romance book, things might not get more dangerous and we probably wouldn't want them to. So I'm thinking about, fantasy, sci-fi, action genre, things are dangerous when you have a villain, when you have something at stake, when you have life and death in the balance. The circumstances are going to be more dangerous for the protagonist and for the protagonist's group. A lot of times, what this means, and especially this is very evident by how Save the Cat talks about the section after the midpoint, is that bad guys close in. That's a really quick way of understanding what happens in this post midpoint section. The villain actually has a plan and he's going to try to ensnare the hero in it. So, a lot of times, the villain is going to take center stage. What they're planning becomes more evident, or they make a move towards the hero that's full of danger and means potential death or harm to the protagonist. And before this, it's called fun and games. Like the protagonist might not be having a great time, right? Like in the Hunger Games, Katniss, she's not having a good time. But before the midpoint, the game makers aren't out to get her. They're not sending hounds after her and trying to stop her from surviving, right? It's just the general, survival is at stake. But then you have this pointed force of antagonism that's fully turned towards the hero. What this does for the reader is this makes the reader care a lot more. Are they going to survive? Are they going to make it? Like, can they make it with all of this stuff coming at them? The protagonist probably does survive towards the end, but there's always this open question of what's going to happen, And so that grabs a reader's interest if that danger is higher, especially after the midpoint, after they've had the time to get acclimated to the new world in the fun and games. Now it's time to get serious. And that's what the bad guys close in is for. And the midpoint is that shift. The next thing the midpoint does is ups the stakes. Even though, there's more danger and then it's almost like more risk to life, that is not what I'm talking about when I say that it ups the stakes. What I mean is that what the hero loves, cares about, or wants is even more in danger than it was before. You could have something that they've grown to care about is now in danger. And they didn't care about it at the beginning of the story, but now it's the stakes are higher because all of a sudden they realize they care about this thing and now it's at stake. There's also this idea of a different kind of stakes gets introduced into the story. So where the stakes could be very personal, like just what they care about, their ambition, the object of their desire is at stake. Well, now all of a sudden the world is at stake and it's in their hands to fix it. That is a huge way of upping the stakes, especially in the fantasy genre. You could also still play on the thing that they've always wanted, the thing that's always been at stake. Then it's even more at stake. And so maybe it's even more important to get that goal, whatever it happens to be. And it's more in danger than it was before. And so it's just like all the tension rises. I love midpoints where you think you're getting into one thing, and then the second half of the book is like blowing your mind with just how much they take that initial premise and fun and games and back blurb cover, and they just amp it up so many levels that you can't believe what you've just read. Like, that is an awesome book, and it's all catalyzed by this midpoint. Okay, the fourth essential component is proactivity. So, well, it's not essential. Some books don't do it right. This is storytelling. We have rules, but people break them, and sometimes to the benefit of the story and sometimes to the detriment of the story, but it's all experimentation. There are no actual rules. Okay. But what I find is that proactivity from the hero, because of the midpoint, is a hallmark of doing a midpoint well. When all of this stuff happens with these stakes getting raised, with the danger increasing, with this turning point, what this does to the character, to the hero, is that it forces them to reprioritize and to focus on their goal. A character who has been passive and reactionary becomes proactive. This, like other shoe dropping at the midpoint, makes the hero react in making a plan. I have to get to the goal, and here's how I'm going to do it. Now, a lot of times, especially in good books, nothing goes according to plan, and that's fine. That's good because it's going to teach that character a lesson continually. It's going to help sharpen them and bring them to their lowest moment so that they can really learn the theme and transform and all that good stuff. They're going to think that this is worth really, really pursuing with all of their energy, and so they're going to become proactive. Here's a bonus thing that midpoints can do, and especially in a lot of action stories, a lot of times a timer gets introduced at the midpoint, which is really, really good for making a hero proactive. Like, okay, if you don't get me the money in a day, then this person you love is going to die. That's raised stakes, that's high tension, that's bad guys closing in, that's hero needs to get proactive, right? Checks all the boxes. It's just like this mechanism that writers use to just crank all of those things to a high level. So a timer can be very, very effective if you're not exactly sure how to do this. In a fantasy story, it could be something along the lines of like some astrological event is happening that they learn about and they need to complete their plan. I just watched Avatar recently. I think that's where that example is coming from, in the third season. Lots and lots of different timers that you can do. Okay, that's your midpoint crash course. Those are the key things about a midpoint. I would really look for them in the stories that you read because it's so fun when you see how well they're done. And then you're like, yep, I got it. That makes so much sense. That's the device that they're using to create structure in the middle of the story and to set the stage for everything that's happening after this, including the finale, and also to make good on all the promises and all the setup that's happened in the first half of the book. Like, it's almost, oh my gosh, I'm getting this image of like Mario Kart when you hit like a rainbow strip and you just like, it's taking everything, all the momentum you've gained beforehand, and it's zooming it forward. It's so good. Midpoints are so fun. They're literally my favorite thing to think about in books right now. Maybe I'll get off my midpoint kick eventually. It's gone on for months. I honestly just think it's so good. I need to get on a finale kick because finales are a lot harder. If you like this video and you want to know more about writing craft and the things that I've learned by surveying every writing craft resource I can get my hands on, you should subscribe to my channel where I'm going to be continually talking about these things because there's always more to know, always more to learn, always more to synthesize, right? Like, the more you learn, like, you can learn these basics over and over, and each person is going to conceptualize it slightly differently and write about it differently. And then if you just read all of those different resources, even on those same basic principles, you're going to get such a complete picture of what stories mean to all these different people and, just in general, how to write a good story. And so that is what I'm here to do, is to synthesize that for myself because I want to know, and I might as well talk about it to you. So that's what these videos are. So if you're interested in that, subscribe. Also, like this video if you enjoyed it. I also have a Fiverr linked down below for book coaching and developmentally critiquing novels. So if you want me to developmentally critique your novel, tell you how your midpoint's going, let me know. Check out the link below. Thanks so much for watching. This is a fun one. I enjoyed this. I will see you in the next video. Bye.